Hello, makers. This is the third and last installment in my Quick Christmas Cards series to get ready for next year. And so, as you know, I've been using the Dickens paper pack and the Tartan Plaids paper pack from Whimsy Stamps. And in the last episode, I cut from all of these papers and made some A2 cards. And I was going to throw these away, but I just couldn't bring myself to throw them away. They're good scraps. So I decided to put them to use. And that's what today's episode is going to be about. We're going to put all of these wonderful scraps to use. So I got out my little Tim Holtz tonic trimmer and I started to trim off all the little excess pieces that I didn't need. And that left me with some 2.5 inch pieces, sometimes some 1 inch pieces, 1 3/4 inch pieces. And all of that is fine. It doesn't matter at this point. The width, like you can see, this is a 1 inch piece. I just want to cut all of those excess pieces off, and then I'll be left with a little pile of scraps that we are going to put to use today to make some cards. So you can see on this one, because I cut from the center, I got two pieces from that, one on one side and one on the other, that I could use together if I want. And so just keep going that way until you get the whole pile cut. Once you have all of your scraps cut, now comes the hard part. You have to decide which scraps you're going to put with which plaids. And so I kind of just have my pile set aside there, but I decided on this plaid and then these uh, scenes from a couple of different scraps. So the trees are from one scrap, and then I cut that building down in half. I decided to alternate the scenes with the plaids. And so that's kind of what I'm doing there. And that little tiny piece that I'm putting on right now is actually from the bottom of that original scrap. I needed just a little bit more of that plaid, and so that's an option. Sometimes I pulled it out of the trash and I cut the bottom piece off and it fit just perfectly. But that is my decision. That made my decision for my reasoning to make this card horizontal rather than vertical because that piece was so short. So you have that option as well that you have to decide. And then once you get them all attached, I just put them on a little piece of 4 by 5 1/4 inch scrap paper. And once you get them all lined up, you attach them to that scrap paper, and there you go. Now you have a card base. And then before I put it on the cards, I am going to cut some metallic paper. The Tim Holtz craft stock is what I'm going to use. And I'm going to make a little frame like that around each of them. So basically the sides aren't going to matter too much. Now on this one, I decided to do much the same, but I cut my scenery into 3 pieces. And then I have 4 pieces of that plaid. And I just lined those all up and did the same thing, trim around the outside of that 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece. Now, you don't always have to cut them the way I have been doing. Sometimes, like this one, I wanted to leave the house whole, and so I just put it down the center of that piece and put my plaid pieces on both sides like that. And very quickly, you have another card base. And you just kind of continue like this. If you'll remember, the lampstand and the house were both on the same card, and I had cut the center out. So with this one, I decided to trim that plaid into 3 pieces, put one on each side and one down the center, and go ahead and keep those whole. So, even though the center is kind of gone, those 2 pieces still go together really well, and I love that lampstand, so I'm glad I got to use it in this, piece. So, as you're looking at these, you might think, they're a little harsh, and don't worry, we have a couple of things we're gonna do later on in this process that will kind of pull it all together and make it a little more cohesive. Now, this is another one I wanted to keep the house whole, so I just trimmed a little bit of that gingham plaid and left the house whole in the center. And again, it makes just a super simple, super fast card. And I just have a few scraps left, and so I was kind of wondering if I was going to be able to work this out at this point. And so as I laid my scraps out, I kind of opted for several where I just left the house whole and put the plaid on both sides like this. And then I get to where I'm not sure what to do with these last few. So I kind of ran out of my plaid scraps on a couple of these. And so I decided to kind of start laying them out. And as you can see, some of the things didn't quite go together. They didn't quite go with the plaids that I had. So I rearranged and rearranged. But thankfully, I had some extra plaids. You can see I pulled that little strip out of the trash over there on the far right. But I had some extra pieces of the tartan plaid, so I pulled a whole piece out, and that helped me stretch this just far enough. So thank goodness for that. So you can see that on these, then I decided on several of them to go ahead and cut the house down the middle and kind of make those, I don't know, window type scenes peeking through on those. And the one on the far right are two completely different cards, and that's okay. I felt like the colors went together with the lampstand and that tree. So it all worked out. So this one with the plaids, and I'm not worried about that little 1/4 inch strip on the one side. You'll see once I get that frame on that really there's only about 1/4 of an inch on the right side as well. So, and I realized I got that one down a little too far, so I pulled it up so that I could make sure I saw that bench in the scenery. So you'll see that this works out and there's not so much on the right side of that last card. So there I trimmed it off and they're very close. Then once I get the frame on, it'll be fine. Now I got out my metallic craft stock from Tim Holtz Ideology and I got out that inverted scallops rectangle die from Whimsy Stamps. And I cut out the frames that are going to go around each of these card bases. And that's one of the reasons I wasn't too worried about how closely they match on the sides. So this is going to cover up a lot of my mistakes. Now you want to save that piece from the center. We're going to use it later on for cutting out the word Christmas. And once you get all of your frames cut, we're going to put them on the outside like this. So that's really easy to do. You just want to get your favorite adhesive like I'm doing here, put some of that around there, and then center it on the card base. Now, I really worked to try and get the scene centered and make sure that I didn't get any of the glue on the front. So you can see me wiping the glue off. But you really want to try and get the scene centered. So if you need to, you might have to trim off a little 1/8 of an inch on the top and the bottom so that you can kind of move that card around and make sure that the frame is equal on both sides of the scene. So I did that on quite a few of them just to make sure that it looked centered. And then again, that's me wiping off all the excess glue. I didn't want glue. We're gonna do something at the end, and so really you don't have to be that careful about it. I don't know what I was thinking. But this is what we're gonna do with the sentiment. So to get the word Christmas and also the little part that says Merry to all, I'm gonna need some stamps and a die. So I wanted to show you how it looked on the vertical and the horizontal cards. So I'm using this same thing for all of the cards. So we're going to I had 9 cards. So we're going to do this 9 times. And the products I used to stamp Merry and to all are from this stamp set. You're My Jolly Clear stamp set from Whimsy Stamps. Has a lot of great sentiments, and I just pulled the little word to all and Merry, and I stamped those using my stamp platform on just little scraps of white paper that I trimmed with my scissors down to, be fairly close to the letters. Then I'll show you what I did after I show you this. Then for the word Christmas, I wanted it layered. So I used the Christmas word die from Whimsy Stamps and two scraps of heavy white cardstock, and I cut out two of the Christmas word dies in white, and then I layered them together. And then using the scrap from the center of the frame, I cut out a gold Christmas word, and I put that on top of the two layers of white cardstock. And then that left a little bit of gold on that was left after I cut the word Christmas out. And so I just attached my Merry and to all into the little sections that were left over and trimmed them out with my scissors. And that's how I got the entire sentiment. So you're going to see me putting those together right now. And I'm going to show you how I did all of that. But I wanted to show you all of the products that I used to do the sentiment since it was going to take a couple of different steps. So here I've already attached the two layers of white cardstock for the Christmas word die, and I'm just putting some glue on the front of it quickly, and I'm attaching the gold piece. So you can see I have two piles because I needed 9 of the gold Christmas words. So now I'm just lining up that gold word die onto the two white ones so that they line up and it covers up the white. And then I have just a nice thick word that will stand out, and it gives just some nice dimension. So now I'm attaching the word dies to the cards, and I did this in different places on the cards depending on where I thought it would look best. On the horizontal ones, I put them in the middle, but you can see on this vertical one, I put it up at the top, and I just used the Merry to All set that I had. I just used one set and it helped center the Christmas word where I wanted it. And then I just did that on all of the cards. I used that same set to make sure that I got the words where I wanted them. And then I just went through and I trimmed all of the Marys and all of the to alls down and then attached them all to the gold scraps and trimmed all those out and attached all of those. So I just found it went faster if I did this kind of all at the same time than if I did each card individually. It took me a lot longer when I was doing them individually, so I found this was the quickest way to do it. So you can see me just going through there and trimming out all the little words and then attaching them in all of those little scrap pieces. So that way I've used up all my scraps. I've used up the gold scraps, I've used up the plaid scraps, I used up all the scenery scraps, and I didn't feel bad about throwing away what was left over at this point because those really were unusable scraps after all of this. So there you can see on that vertical one, I put Christmas in the middle. And that one, it's up at the top. So you can see that just depending on what your scenery is, you can decide where you want the word Christmas. And then go ahead and make sure that you put the Merry and the to all in the top left and the bottom right. I attached those with some foam squares that I had cut in half. So there you can see I cut them in half. And then I just used the foam squares to give dimension. Also, since the word Christmas had some dimension, I wanted these to also have just a little dimension. So these are very thin foam squares. And there you go. That's all there is to it. Now, I do have one more thing that I did. And so I got out my Distress Rock Candy Clear Glitter again and my Distress Mica Flakes. And I got them mixed together like I did with the first set of cards. And then using my Distress Resist spray, I sprayed over the entire thing, did my little sprinkles to add some wintry, shimmery goodness, dump off any of the excess, and then set it aside to dry. So I just thought I would try something different this time. So I didn't decide to do this until the end. And so you don't need to be as fastidious about getting all of the glue off of the metallic because this will cover it up. So I didn't know that beforehand. And so it took me forever to get all the little glue bits off. And look, you don't need to. You can cover it with the glitter and the rock candy. So here are my finished cards, and I'm trying to show you the shimmer. It's a little difficult to show it, but I think it adds just the perfect touch, and it really pulls all of those different elements together that at the beginning you may have been thinking, oh, this is really bad, putting all these plaids and scenes all striped together. But once you have the frame and you have that glitter and mica flakes on there, it really just pulls the whole thing together, makes it very cohesive. I actually love these. I wasn't sure about them either when I started, but I'm really happy with them. So I hope that you've enjoyed this series. I really had a lot of fun putting these cards together and uh, even these scrap cards. They were a lot of fun, and it was just very freeing to just kind of take my scraps and put them together and end up with beautiful cards like this. So thank you, Whimsy, for products that make it super simple to make beautiful Christmas cards very quickly. And thank you for watching this year-end series. I want to wish you a very happy new year and a very creative day.